Hi, and welcome to another episode of Livius TV. I'm your host, Jason Breitkopf. Now, hopefully you've been watching the videos and you saw one that we posted recently about transitioning from elementary to middle school. So today we're going to be talking about the transition from middle school to high school. Now, it depends on the person. For many people, the transition from elementary to middle school is very traumatic. For me, it was a little bit different. It wasn't that big of a transition, actually. The big transition and the one that was traumatic for me was the transition from middle school to high school. And that is true for a lot of folks. I really wanted to focus on some of the different issues that go into that. One of the biggest ones for students transitioning from middle school to high school is social. Now, when we talked about the previous transition, we focused more on the anxiety students feel about a new space, a new building, lots more students, but we really didn't talk about the social aspects. Students going into middle school are probably thinking about their interests, what music, what movies, what TV shows they like a lot more, and they're not all the same kids shows, so they're starting to differ from their friends. That may be true, but it's really emphasized at the high school level. Starting freshman year of high school, students tend to split off into groups or cliques much more than they do in previous years. And as multiple elementary schools feed into middle schools, and then possibly multiple middle schools feed into a single high school, whether it's a big high school in a city or a regional high school in a suburban or rural area, now you're sitting with and working with and learning with students from neighborhoods that you haven't known them your whole lives as a student. You didn't grow up with them as a student. Even though they may have grown up in the same town as your child, that student doesn't know these other kids. So that social shifting is a huge factor in ninth grade, and that's one thing to look out for. One of the things that can help students is rather than worry about the friends they've lost, and students are going to worry about the friends they've lost, friends who have changed interests, or they're not in the same classroom anymore, or they're in different tracks at their high school, whether that's academic tracks like honors versus college prep, or the business program or the tech program versus the college-based program. Whichever way your high school does it, students may find themselves in different programs or tracks from their friends at the middle school or elementary level. So one thing to focus on instead of the loss is to look forward to making new friends. And I know that sounds like a challenge, but there's a couple ways to do that at the high school level that aren't available to younger students. One is the high school will probably have a lot more clubs and activities than middle school did or than the elementary school did at all. Whether it's an academic club like the math team or a chess club, or when I was in high school I was in the political science club. That was a chance to meet new people who shared interests with you. Also, there's a lot more options for sports. Many middle schools will have a track team or a baseball team, but that's about it. At the high school, depending on how big your high school is, there could be 5 or 10 or 15 different sports. Everything from the big name sports like basketball, football, baseball, and soccer, through things like tennis, bowling, golf, swim team, dive team, depending on where you are in the country. There's a lot of different options for students to meet people who share similar interests and make a new pool of friends. There's also the arts. Lots of schools have art clubs and theater programs and music clubs and after-school chorus and marching band, and that's a chance for students to make new friends who share interests. And I think the theme that's coming through here is it's about shared interest. One of the things I've discovered about elementary schools and middle schools to a certain amount is that they're generally organized by where in the town or what town you live in. So they're your neighbors. They're the kids you grew up with in terms of you could walk to their house. That doesn't mean you share interests with those folks. They're just your neighbors, and so you have some similar and shared experiences, but the true things you care about, the things you love, may not be the same. It's starting in high school and much more so in college, where your social groups are built around common interests. And that's a good thing, because these are friends that you're going to hopefully have for the rest of your life. So that's one big aspect of the transition from middle school to high school that's overlooked, is the positives of the social interactions. Another big factor for the transition from middle school to high school are the classes themselves. The level of classes and the focus of the classes become more intense. They're just harder. And not hard in a bad way, they're hard in you're learning new and amazing things. There's a great difference between a high school biology or physics class than middle school general science. They're much more focused on specific topics. The same thing for math. It goes from general math to learning about algebra or geometry or calculus. Even in English or social studies, it might go from general social studies, world cultures, to US history, European history, AP history. And in English class, you're going from the transition from learning how to read to reading for information to, at the high school level, reading literature and using reading to discover and learn new things. So everything is a little bit more advanced and a little bit harder, even if you're not taking the most advanced classes, which, if you can, I would recommend just to maximize your ability to get into the college of your choice. So the classes are a little bit harder, and you as a parent, you're probably not going to be able to help. I mean, there may be some areas. If you're a history professor, sure, you know enough about history that you can help your son or daughter with their history homework. But that may mean that even algebra is a topic that you've lost because you haven't done it in so many years, and that's okay. It's okay to admit that you don't know everything. I mean, it's hard. We as parents, it's hard to say that to our children. We don't know everything, but we don't. And so there are facilities at the high school. Some teachers stay after school. There are often tutoring or peer tutoring centers on campus or learning centers. The SPED department will often do programs to help students who are struggling in a topic. And there's always a chance of tutors, whether it's after school programs, a private company, a private tutor. There's help out there. So don't just let it go. If something's challenging for your student, get help. Just ask for help. That's, in my opinion, more than any other, the three most important words in the English language. Ask for help. So I strongly recommend that. Another big thing is that students are maturing physically and emotionally at the high school level in a way that you really haven't seen since they were little kids. You know, when they were transitioning to middle school, sure, they're growing up, they're getting taller, but in many ways, middle school kids are still little kids. I remember a class I taught once at a middle school. It was 7th grade algebra. This is when I worked in public schools. And the students, were maturing physically and emotionally. They were starting to get a little bit older, and yet one of the students had an IEP, an individualized education plan, where she was allowed to bring a stuffed animal to school. And all the kids, both boys and girls, asked and received from her a chance to snuggle with that stuffed animal during class. And it was part of the program to allow that, and I was really happy to do so because they're still little kids in many ways when they're in 7th grade. When they're in 9th, 10th, 11th, and now 12th grade, by 12th grade, a lot of students are adults these days. Students are turning 18 during senior year. So you have that situation where your 9th grader who's transitioning into high school is in the same building and sometimes even in the same classes and after school programs as kids who are now becoming adults. So understanding how that works and helping your students through that process and talking with them and being open with them. I know it's difficult because what high school student, what teenager wants to talk about stuff like that with mom and dad? It's really hard. But I strongly recommend make the effort. Reach out to them and talk to them about this transition. And if you can, share stories from your own experience. That's the best way to make that connection. Not to say that you know it all or you know best, but that you have some understanding of that experience that they're going through. That's the best way to do it, in my opinion. So I recommend that. Now, there's a lot of other things that we can talk about, and what we've done is in the notes below, we've left a link to my article on our blog about the transition from middle school to high school. So take a look at that. There's also a lot of resources out there that I reference and make note of for you to look up in education journals and things like that. If you like this episode, please remember to star heart whatever you do to tell us you like it. You can leave notes below or questions below. Please do, because we're happy to answer them in upcoming videos. And if you share this with your share sheet, we still get credit for people watching it, even if it's not on YouTube or Facebook, so please do that. And as always, please remember to subscribe. We also have the audio podcast where we may post some of the audio from these episodes, so you can follow that. It's currently called the Endeavor Podcast, but we will be rebranding that. And that links up to our Twitter feed at EndeavorPod, which, again, we'll be changing the name soon as we change the name for all of our media. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and as always, let's keep learning.